perceive the shifts that are going on automatically all the time in a seemingly smooth and continuous manner. But that continuity is an illusion. So if you're willing to really truly start redefining your reality, the reality you prefer, by following your excitement, by acting on it, your true vibration, by being who you really know you are in a bold and applicable way in your experience of physical reality, the greater and greater and greater shifts you will be able to perceive in your reality, the bigger leaps you will take from one parallel reality to the next in terms of how you define them, and the greater the comparison difference will be between the two. And then you will know, really perceive, really experience that you are truly shifting in a superconductive and hyperconductive way. You are truly flowing through a slipstream of energy of your own consciousness and becoming more and more aware that you are already doing all the things you actually desire to do. It's just that now you need more ability to become more aware of that fact rather than learning anything new. Make sense? All right. So, we will let all of that sink in. Absorb it at your own rate. It is all in there. Just take it in at whatever rate your belief systems will allow you to, and I guarantee you that when you begin to truly, consciously, and intentionally apply what we have just talked about and come up with these realizations and allow them to click in your psychology, you will start to see time and space become far more plastic, far more malleable. Synchronicity will start to amplify and magnify, and you will find that you're able to allow time and space to become very, very slippery, so that magical things can happen very easily, very effortlessly, whereas heretofore it seemed to take too much effort. Let go of the idea that you need effort to learn to do new processes. You are already a flawless creation machine. You already automatically shift through billions of parallel realities every second. You are expanding faster than the speed of light, but the speed of light is just your illusionary barrier to the experience of space-time reality. But you yourself, your consciousness itself, expands more rapidly, way more rapidly, than the idea you call the speed of light, which compared to the idea of infinite consciousness is very, very slow. So, let all this begin to sink in at whatever rate, in whatever way you need to. If you wish to listen to the recording again a few times, it's up to you. If you think you've got it, that's fine. Just let it sink in and let it reveal itself to you at whatever rate your belief system is comfortable in becoming aware of these ideas, and use them as you wish. Use them as you desire. Use them as you prefer. They are tools that you can apply in your physical reality. These awarenesses are tools you can apply in your physical reality and get an effect. Remember, what you in your reality have now more recently called the law of attraction, what we in our reality call the third law, is what you put out is what you get back. It's as simple as that, but simply remember that what you're getting back is nothing but a reflection. You are the prime cause in your life. Nothing else controls you. Nothing else can. Nothing else has the power to. Only by your agreement can you be affected by anything anyone else offers you, be it positive or negative. Only by your agreement, whether it be unconscious or conscious, only by your agreement can you co-experience anything similar to what another individual is choosing to experience. So it's completely in your hands, it's completely up to you. You are completely self-empowered beings. Therefore, all of this simply comes to you by way of information that works for us in our reality that we know can work for you in your reality, but it's up to you to decide whether or not you prefer to take it in and use it in that way. If you do not, it's up to you, because we love you unconditionally and must allow you to decide what is
the state of affairs, a way of talking about particularly a human being who has learned to live in harmony with the Tao. everything is fundamentally in harmony with the Tao. In the book called the Jungyong, or the Unwobbling Pivot, it is said, the Tao is that from which nothing can depart. That from which things can depart is not the Tao. Fundamentally, you see, you can't get away from it. It's like a situation in which we are all floating in a tremendous river. And the river carries you along, anyhow. Now, some of the people in the river are swimming against it, but they're still being carried along. Others have learned that the art of the thing is to swim with it. And they're carried along too. But they know it, you see. They know they're carried along, whereas the people who are swimming against it think they're going in the opposite direction. But they're not really. So that was a sort of discussion we were having this morning, when I find invariably, whenever I talk about these things, Americans raise moral issues because we are a people incredibly bamboozled by preachers. And so this always comes up. Bamboozled. Preachers. Yes. And have chronic guilty consciences. And so those questions are always raised. But this, you see, explains part of this situation, that you have to flow with the river. There is no other way, but that you can swim against it and pretend not to be flowing with it, but you still are. So, but a person who is not making that pretense anymore, who knows that you have to go with the river and swim with it, suddenly he acquires behind everything that he does the power of the river. The person swimming against the river, you see, does not by his action express the force of the river. The person swimming with it, he goes along and he has that whole river behind him, but he's subtly directing it, because you can change direction in the course of the river. You can go to the left or to the right, as a ship can use a rudder to still go along with the current, or more skillful still, as a sailboat can tack. Because when a sailboat tacks and goes in a direction contrary to the wind, it still is using the wind to blow it along. Now that is the most highly skillful art of all. That is Taoism in perfection, the art of sailing. Very intelligent. I remember once I was looking in the open air, and one of those glorious little down things came. I picked it up and brought it down, and it looked as if it was struggling to get away, just as if you caught an insect by one leg, like a very long leg. It seemed to be struggling to get away, and at first I thought, well, it's not doing that. That's just the wind blowing. But then I thought again. Really? Only the wind blowing? Surely it is the structure of this thing which, in cooperation with the existence of wind, enables it to move like an animal, but using the wind's effort, not its own. It is more intelligent being than an insect, in a way, because an insect uses effort, like a person who rows a boat uses effort, but the man who puts up a sail is using magic. He lets nature do it for him, with the intelligence to use a sail. See? So in just this way, there's the meaning of is that kind of intelligence which, without your using very much effort, gets everything to cooperate. You, for example, never force other people to agree with you, that you give them the notion that the idea you wanted them to have is their own. This is a sentiment. But if she, as it were, makes a void, then, and is slightly difficult to get, then people get excited. They know she's a highly prized object, and so they pursue. Same way, when you want to teach a baby to swim, the thing you can do is to put the baby in the water, and then move backwards in the water and create a vacuum. And this pulls the baby along. It helps it to learn the feel of the water and how to swim. It's the same principle. So, also, clever, difficult to getness is one of the very best means of acquiring immense publicity. Published in 7 limited edition. And this became an extraordinarily celebrated They waited and waited and built it up. Finally, it was published in 7 edition. And it was a knockout, because the first one had been sort of difficult to find. And you have patience. Always. So, the whole art of the Buddha, the Tao Te Ching, is a book written for several purposes. You may take it as a guide to mystical understanding of the universe. You may take it as a dissertation on the principles of nature, almost a naturalistic, a handbook of natural law, we would say. Or you may also take it as a political book, a book of wisdom for government. And the principle which it advocates, basically, is the virtue of governing by not ruling. Look at it in this way. Supposing the President of the United States were as unknown to you by name as the local sanitary inspector, man who looks after the drains and the sewage disposal and all that kind of thing. This is not a glamorous figure, see? But for that very reason, he probably does his job more efficiently than the President. Because the President wastes an enormous amount of time interviewing the various groups from the Elks and the Girl Scouts and conferring honors and all this kind of thing. The poor man's life must be an utter torment because he's so well known and therefore has absolutely no time to give to the government of the country. He's thick as his mail. And all the people who have to be employed lifting that out and assist. So that if he were someone quite anonymous.
Scientists are understanding that rather than space and time being two things, they now refer to space-time as two sides of one coin. Therefore, when you experience in the infinity space, which is finite, you then create time in which to again move through it, move across it. One other idea, when you are in your natural state, an infinite, eternal, multidimensional, all-knowing being, there is actually a certain idea that you cannot experience. When you know it all already, there is not the idea within that all-knowingness of discovery, of experiencing things as if for the first time, which, by the way, many of you say you like. And also the idea you call surprise. How could anything surprise you if you always know it's coming? So one of the fundamental reasons to create a linear frame of reference is to experience things as if, in that sense, you begin as a blank slate. And then, by elaborately playing an amnesia, so to speak, on your all-knowingness, can then seem to experience things with the joy of discovery. with the apparency of the first time. Even in your vernacular, even in your planetary society, you enjoy not knowing what is going to occur when you go to, say, your movie. For in that sense, you have the joy of seeing how it will play out. From the multiplicity of possibilities, you will see how one particular version will play out and enjoy being surprised by it. This is one, shall I say, microcosmic analogy to your entire life. The idea of unfolding as if you are actually experiencing things for the first time. Now, many of you view this as a curse. But you may also understand, now that I have mentioned it, now that you are entertaining the notion, that you have chosen on some level to do this. That seeming amnesia only exists from where you are sitting, from your standpoint right now, from the perspective of your higher self, your soul, your oversoul, whatever you wish to call it. You already know what you are doing. You already are playing out a set of choices, so to speak, that you have laid down. So nothing occurs that is outside of your consciousness, outside of your being. Your consciousness is your infinite knowingness. What you refer to on your planet as your mentality is your finite version of knowingness. So you experience your mentality as an unfoldment. And from this perspective, it seems quite real. It seems like this is the only reality. This is the only, many times individuals will say, planet with intelligent life. Not true. And you may understand that that is a very narrow point of view. By excluding 99.9999 so on and so forth % of reality, you focus in on a very fine fractionated portion of your totality. You may feel that seeing, thinking, hearing, smelling, feeling one thing at a time is the normal mode of operation. But from your higher self perspective, it is a unique experience, for your higher self has the ability to understand an infinite number of things at once. So therefore, one thing at a time is actually the exception rather than the rule. How you set up your reality here, so to speak, is by seeming as though one thing at a time is the rule, and playing that sense, that fine ability to focus down to one thing at a time. These are all built into the reasoning of your higher self for experiencing this type of reality. Now, the sense of amnesia that you impose upon yourself is so pervasive, is so all-inclusive, that you have conveniently, perhaps some of you will experience that inconveniently, forgotten even why you're here. But obviously, you are now beginning to allow yourself to attract the resources through whatever you read, whatever you find yourself attracted to, interactions such as this, to remind yourself through reflection, through a mirror. I am only a mirror within your own consciousness, that these other ideas are so, effectively beginning to lift your amnesia, again, along a timeline, an unfoldment, a bit at a time. Your timing is always impeccable. Impeccable. It cannot be otherwise. It is always that where you are, right here, right now, the only place and time you ever experience is always the most perfect place in the entirety of your being. I believe this is another little minor fact you may have forgotten. Therefore, you will often create your reality as going somewhere a whole lot better than right here, which is in a sense only an idea. For you are the one who has determined that right here, and right now is not the perfect place and time. When you assign that meaning, needless to say, you get that effect. And constantly are you going somewhere, never quite being where you are. Where you are is always unique. Where you are always has advantages that any other place you seem to go, and I am speaking in your own linear terms, will not contain. So every here and now has a unique advantage. And your willingness to simply remind yourself of this is perhaps one of the first steps to beginning to see or beginning to allow yourself to examine what is right in front of your face. Always does a moment contain a unique advantage. Remember that, unless you choose to forget it. When I say you are always trusting in something, I mean it. For trust is one of the mechanisms that your mentality utilizes to hold your reality in place. So if you trust, or if you do not trust, for instance, in the statement, I get what I want, one way to look at it is that you don't have faith or trust that you get what you want. But perhaps another more efficacious or more advantageous way to look at it is that you are trusting that you do not get what you want. So it is not a matter of building up trust that you do get what you want. It is a matter of identifying and acknowledging where you are already placing your trust, which in general, there is some under or overtone in many individuals that you get what you are dealt. However, that is not the only way to look at it. When you look at anything from a particular trust level, you experience the results of that trust. You always get the evidence for whatever you are trusting in. And trusting in I do not get what I want, again, perhaps some of you will be familiar with some of the results.
Lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves. but they enslaved the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
We call in Asia jhana, which means the practice of meditation. You can also call it yoga. These are really, there are little nitpicking details we might make between them, but they're really equivalent words. Jhana, yoga, Zen, and of course also the Sufi disciplines are all the same thing, but they're largely missing in Western religion. Because Western religion is excessively talkative, excessively didactic, and does not really practice silence. The nearest thing we have, we have some Catholic orders, like Trappists, and we have the Quakers, who practice silent disciplines, but I'm rather inclined to believe that they talk to themselves while they're silent. Real silence, jhana, is stopping talking to yourself inside your head. Is to get real mental silence. Now that doesn't mean that you have a blank mind. You are vividly aware of what is, only you don't give it any name. Now, if you, for the moment, would experiment with this by closing your eyes and listening to all sounds whatsoever that are going on, but don't try to identify or name them. Listen to the susurrus of the world in the same way as you would listen to classical music without asking what it means. If you find yourself thinking compulsively, unable to stop naming what is going on, don't try to stop it. Listen to yourself doing that in the same way as you would be listening to the air conditioning. And as and when I say anything, don't try to make sense of it. Just listen to the sound of the voice. And I ask you, listening to what is, can you hear anything past or anything future? Can you hear yourself as a listener? It's amazing how many things there are that aren't so. And just for a moment, also be aware of your breath. Are you doing it, or is it happening to you? Or both? Or neither? Listen and feel the breath as it wants to go, as your ears want to respond to the waves. And don't be uptight about coughing or shifting your position or, doing whatever nature wants you to do. It's all part of the symphony. Just listen. Ears only and breath only. This is your method of testing out what reality is. You're a baby. You have no ideas. Nobody's ever told you anything. You have no theories about the universe, and if you're anxious about that, you've checked your theories at the door. You can pick them up when you go out. Just feel it. I think I've got you into the state of meditation. At least that's the way it feels. Remember, in this state, we are not looking for any result. Nothing at all to be accomplished in the future. We are simply experiencing what is, now, here. And we are abandoning the project, momentarily, of forming any concepts about it. Watch it. And don't ask who is watching it, because that's a merely grammatical question, because the verb has to have a subject according to the conventions of our language. There is a watching. Feel it like that. This is called ta-tha-ta in Sanskrit. Ta-ta-ta.
The way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people, and so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
In the way of its happening. Well, to go back to Lietze, who succeeded in riding the wind, what happened? Lietze found a very great master and went to study with him. And the master lived in a small hut. And Lietze sat outside the hut. And the master paid absolutely no attention to him. This is sort of the way with Taoist masters. Because why would they want students? They have nothing to teach. So after a year sitting outside, Lietze went away. And he just fed up with waiting so long. Then he sort of got regretful about this and thought he really should make a try. So he went back to the master, who said, why this ceaseless coming and going? So he sat there and tried to control his mind in such a way that he would not think of the differences between gain and loss. In other words, try to live in such a way that nothing is either an advantage or a disadvantage. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. And all the neighbors came around to commiserate that evening. So sorry to hear your horse has run away. That's too bad. And he said, maybe. The next day, the horse came back, bringing 7 wild horses with it. And everybody came around in the evening and said, oh, isn't that lucky? What a great turn of events. You've now got 8 horses. And he said, maybe. The next day, his son tried to break one of these horses and ride it, and was thrown and broke his leg. And they all said, oh dear, that's too bad. And he said, maybe. The following day, the conscription officers came around to recruit, to force people into the army, and they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. And all the people came around and said, isn't that great? And he said, maybe. You see, that is the attitude of not thinking of things in terms of gain or loss, advantage or disadvantage, because you don't really know. The fact that you might get a letter from a solicitor, from a law office tomorrow, saying that some distant relative of yours had left you $1 million, it might be something you would feel very, very happy about. but the disasters that it could lead to are unbelievable. Internal revenue. To mention only one possibility. You never really know whether something is fortune or misfortune. We only know the momentary changes and as it alters our sense of hope about things. The Taoist is wise enough eventually, you see, to understand that there isn't any fixed good or bad. And so his point of view is what is called non-choosing. Well, anyway, Lietze attempted to keep his mind in a state of non-choosing. And this was a very difficult thing to do, to overcome one's habits of feeling and thinking in this respect. And after he had practiced this for a year, the master looked at him and, sort of recognized he was there. After another year's practice, he invited him to come and sit inside his hut. And then, however, something changed. And Lietze didn't try anymore to control his mind. What he did was, he put it in this way. I let my ears hear whatever they wanted to hear. I let my eyes see whatever they wanted to see. I let my feet move wherever they wanted to go. And I let my mind think of whatever it wanted to think. And then he said it was a very strange sensation because all my bodily existence seemed to melt and become transparent and to have no weight. And I didn't know whether I was walking on the wind or the wind was walking on me. Now that's the fasting of the heart. In the ordinary way, you see, you say, well, that made quite an impression on me, as if you were a slate or a blackboard upon which life makes an impression, as the chalk does on the slate or the blackboard. And so we say, well, here are these events, and I'm the observer of all these events, and I remember them, and they make an impression on me. But in the psychology of Taoism, there is no difference between you as observer and whatever it is that you observe. The only thing that is you is the observation of life from a certain point of view. I said a little while ago, you think your heads are empty and blank, but the actual inside of your head is felt in terms of everything you see on the outside. But we make an opposition, you see, between the thinker and the thought, the experiencer and the experience, the knower and the known. Because we think about knowledge in terms of certain metaphors. The metaphor of the stylus on the writing sheet, the reflection on the mirror, all those sort of images come into our idea of knowledge. But in the Taoist theory of knowledge, it's quite different. There isn't a knower facing the known. It would be more like saying that if there is any knower at all, it contains the known. Your mind, if you have one, is not in your head. Your head is in your mind. Because your mind, understood from the standpoint of vision, is space. The Chinese use this word, hu, which means sky, space, and sometimes emptiness. And there is a saying that form, or, shape and color, there's one word in Chinese that means really both shape and color. And this are said to be identical. Space or emptiness is precisely shape-color, and shape-color is precisely emptiness. This is actually a Buddhist saying from the Tridaya Sutra. So that all that we call space contains the myriads of shapes and colors and bodies and weights and so on.
There is no other choice, and other times understanding that there are many choices. But once you decide who you are, you feel that way, you think that way, you act that way. Another way to put this is when you have decided who you are, you trust in that decision, and then you act as though you trust in that decision. I have presented this particular delineation before. The reason being because it is quite useful. This is how you are already doing it. And when you say and understand that you make a decision, this implies there are other choices. This implies that you can decide something else. This is where you can express what you refer to as free will, but only if you first acknowledge that you have something to do with the process, that you, in and of yourself, are involved in the process of creating your life. We have briefly discussed three general phases of transformation. From being a completely limited being that believes they exist within a reality, to creating your reality consciously and through less limitation, less separation, more integration, according to preference. The three phases are very simple gestures. Awakening, phase one. Perhaps again you can say awakening is simply the notion that, well, is it possible that I'm right? Maybe not even create my own entire reality, but have some minute degree of decision or choice in how it plays out. That can be as subtle as awakening itself. Now, this generally will expand to, well, perhaps I actually have more than just a little to do with it, until it full blossoms to, you mean I create my own reality? Even entertaining that notion is part and parcel of an awakening from an unconscious style of creation to a conscious style of creation. So phase one, the awakening is simply again knowing that there is a choice, knowing that there will be maybe options. Phase two is the acceleration of this idea, accelerating once you have accepted the notion that perhaps you create your own reality, and you accelerate this awareness through attraction. You attract to yourself through the desire to be a conscious creator, through the desire to create your life in a particular preferential, integrated way, the knowledge, the resources, the timing, the individual who will allow you to assist yourself in accelerating this awareness, in expanding this awareness. And you then attract the notions, the tools, the attitudes, the orientation that allow you to understand that only have very small, yet rigid assumptions resulted in the aspects of your life occurring that you do not prefer. Nothing overwhelming or bigger than you, because nothing can be bigger than you and exists within you. You are the biggest thing around. So that acceleration will generally occur as very small seeming ideas. When you apply they replace the more limiting, very small other ideas and make great, grand, sweeping changes in the face of your life. So acceleration is simply the process of beginning to move faster, but you are only moving from yourself to more of yourself. You are not becoming anything better than anything that you have already been, for you are always a complete expression in any given moment. Again, if it is misery, it is complete and perfect misery. It is an expression of your Creator will. But again, that is generally a product of unconsciously created, automatically created, without any thought, which again takes single and small motion. Granted that when you choose to perpetuate, give a certain limiting effect. When you are in the phase of acceleration, you extract the knowledge that allows you to begin to transform or replace many of these small limiting notions with more empowering. For again, you can obtain them all. You do not need to get rid of these old dated ideas and obtain new ideas. You simply choose to express the ideas that are now more representative of who you choose to be. For when you awaken to the idea that you can be who you will be, you then again created the ability to accelerate that awakening, to begin to expand yourself according to presence. When this goes beyond mere feeling, beyond mere wishful thinking, you enter into the final phase of transformation, which is simply being the person that you should be. Without middle step, you automatically then insert the very small motions that create your own reality anyway, according to preference, because they are who you are, who you desire to be. So because you already function this way, there is nothing really new to happen in the world. Simply begin to allow yourself to consciously attract the knowledge to begin to create your reality consciously according to presence. So in as much as you already create the circumstances of your life through, as I have said before, just deciding you are a particular way, trusting that you are a particular way, or having faith, or having complete conviction that you are a particular way, and then acting as though you trust you are that way. You can use your free will. You can use your preference. You can use your desire to decide only to decide according to preference. You do not truly have a momentum of being a certain way that you need to overcome. You create yourself discreetly right now, whenever it is. It is always right now. Right now. Even right now. Right now. Right now. Always. That right now and your ability to absolutely make the decision to do from what's available right now, the thing that is most representative of who you choose to be, is your point of power itself. Is what tells you, well, if I can change right now, and I do change right now, that momentum is just an illusion. For if there were such a thing as momentum, it would go past right now. I would not be able to change right now. So either there is momentum, or you completely create in the moment. Now, more accurately, because you contain it all, both are true. And rather than allow this to overwhelm and confound you, look at this as true. For if both are true, it is not a matter of proving one or the other. It is a matter of choosing. Do I wish there to be a momentum that I have to overcome, which creates the necessity for perpetuating a past and the effect from that past, the locomotive train of that past going right past this particular moment? Or do I choose to...
You can take a higher dimensional crystal and project it to 3 dimensions and get a 3-dimensional shadow, if you want to call it that. We project a slice of E8 crystal down to 3D, which produces a quasi-crystal code or language. And that allows these geometric symbols to build up to the ordinary world of particles and forces that we see around us. So that's our program, is to model physics with a quasi-crystal code made of the simplest bit of 3-dimensional information, the regular tetrahedron.
Was to consider the question of the phases of the planets. Now, we know that the moon goes through phases. We see full moon, half moon, quarter moon, crescent moon, new moon. But what about the planets? Now, in the old Earth-centered view, thank you, the planets, in this case Venus, were imagined. There's a lovely old book which has moving parts, unlike books today, which only accidentally have moving parts. This one is moving on purpose. Venus was imagined to go around the Earth, but also to have a little internal motion of its own. And that view, with the sun out beyond Venus, made a certain prediction about the phases of Venus. You would sometimes see partly illuminated Venus, sometimes see a full illuminated Venus, but no one had a telescope to see whether Venus went through phases, and if so, what kind. Now, here is the Earth-centered view of the universe, with the Earth here and the planets and the sun going around the Earth. This is the supposed orbit of the sun. And in the sun-centered view of the universe, the planets, including the Earth, go around the sun, and, as this old picture shows, go through phases. Well, in the sun-centered view, or hypothesis, let's try and see what the phases ought to be like. What I'm going to do is to have someone be Earth and someone be Venus, and I will try to be the sun, and just because somebody big has to operate the light. And let's see what the phases of Venus would be like. So could we have an Earth person? Thank you. This is an excellent Earth person. And could you please stand by, let's say a few steps up, by that camera, and we will be eventually viewing things on the television screen from the point of view of that camera and that Earth person. And now could we have a Venus person? Venus is a planet completely covered with clouds, although it's a very nasty place on its surface. And so we have this completely clean sphere representing Venus. And could you just stay there for just one moment? And what I'm going to do is point this light representing the sun at Venus. Now, if this were a real sun, it would be shining in all directions, of course, but then everybody in the audience would be blinded by the light from this, and you couldn't see what was happening here. So I'm going to simply follow the motion of Venus around the sun as seen from the Earth. Now, the Earth really ought to be moving around the sun also, but that would be a little awkward, and the Earth would have to step over people's knees and so on. So we're having the Earth stationary, but the point will still be made. So now, Venus, could you please slowly circle the sun? You can do it a little faster than that, actually. It takes Venus 225 days to go around, but we will do it somewhat faster than that. And now notice how we are going into half moon, or half Venus, crescent Venus, and now Venus is passing by the sun, and now the crescent comes around again, and Venus is now nicely walking backwards into a half Venus, and now growing, the phase grows, and soon we will be back near full Venus. Thank you very much, Miss Venus. Thank you very much, Miss Earth. Now, that kind of motion is exactly what Galileo found Venus to do when he looked at it with the first telescope several hundred years ago. And Galileo found that the waxing and waning, the changing from crescent to full back to crescent of Venus did exactly what the sun-centered hypothesis predicted, and not at all what the Earth-centered hypothesis predicted. That's one of the lines of evidence that the Earth is not the center. Now, if we actually look at a picture of Venus, we see that it does go through phases. This is a telescopic view of Venus, and I just show you this so you will believe me if I say Venus goes through phases. Actually, the Earth also goes through phases, and in this picture, there's a lovely picture of the Earth as seen from the moon. The moon is in the foreground, and the crescent above the moon is the Earth as seen from the moon, and it goes through phases if you figure it out for just the same reason that Venus or the moon does as seen from the Earth. Now, this is the geometry of the solar system, but we haven't said anything about scale. How big is it, the solar system? There are lots of ways of finding out, the simplest of which is by radar. You send a radar pulse to a planet, it hits the planet, comes back, you measure how long it took, you know how fast radio or light travels. It travels at the speed of light, and right, that was easy. 186,000 miles a second, 300,000 kilometers a second, and so half of the transit time gives you the distance. And in this way, we can determine, for example, that the Earth is about 150 million kilometers, 93 million miles from the sun. I hear an echo, which we're not supposed to hear quite yet. And what we'd like to do is to give a sense of the scale of the solar system by having someone in the audience say something like, let's say, hello, universe. Seems an innocuous enough remark. And let us see how long it takes for that remark to get to various places, starting with the moon. Who would like to say hello to the universe? That's good. Lots of people would like to say hello to the universe. So would we. That's why we sent the Voyager record. Could you please say hello, universe?
Hello, universe. Hello, universe.
Aha. Now, that was a 1 1/4 second time delay, which is, by accident, just how long it takes for light or radio to travel from the Earth to the moon. Now, we have here a diagram which has just been started out to indicate the rate of progress of a signal sent by radio from the Earth into space. So here's the orbit of the Earth, and we will see how long it takes for that signal to get to the orbits of the other planets: Venus, Mercury, the 2 interior planets, Mars, the next planet out, here's the Sun, and Jupiter and Saturn will be out here. And so in the next few minutes, we will follow the progress of a radio signal, and this is the fastest that anything can travel. So what we are going to see is the fastest travel time that is possible. Now, what I would like to do now is to, while we're waiting for the lights to get to other planets, to begin a discussion of a particular planet. We would like to study in some depth a strange and exotic world. Let us imagine that we know nothing about it.
Who admits that the things that they prefer in their lives are their creation, but the ones they don't, not so easy. The ones because they don't, perhaps they feel slipped in there, but they weren't. Allow us to address those creations, the creations that were, in that sense, products of unconscious belief, but no less your creation. Though those unconscious beliefs most often will yield reality, perhaps you do not prefer. But there is a way to transform it. And first of all, allow us to say that you can never get rid of anything that you create, for you are the entire universe and there is no outside. Therefore, there is nowhere to put anything. Therefore, you can transform something, you can integrate it, you can change its space, but attempting to push it away or get rid of it is only denying your creation. And denial of your creation does not put you squarely back into the position to transform it. You can only transform any creation or any belief if you first acknowledge and own that you do believe. And that is the difference between denial and transformation of your reality. Therefore, allow us to now address the creations within your life that you say you do not resist. All symbols, all events within your reality, again, are part and parcel of you. You cannot truly separate yourself from them because, again, you are not within a reality. The reality is within you. So, therefore, you can truly look at any of the symbols within your reality as a neutral set of props that gives you the opportunity when interacting with that portion of your consciousness to determine how you wish to label it. What significance you assign to it is up to you. And here's the clincher, as you say, the significance or meaning that you assign to any neutral symbol determines the effect that you get out. So therefore, any non-preferential creations that very often may seem even to repeat and be repetitive have been ascribed a particular label by you that has resulted in the negative, unpreferential experience. Now, what this affords you is the ability to understand again, because they are, in a sense, a neutral set of properties. You can choose to label it any way you wish, and being neutral, what this means is there will always be 100% potential for a negative outcome or a positive outcome from the same circumstance. So therefore, you can begin to use all your creations in a positive way. You can begin to utilize the creations you say you do not prefer by looking at them, by reassigning, by reinterpreting your relationship to that system, to that aspect of your consciousness. For again, it is all one thing. Therefore, when you find yourself experiencing a negative reality, understand that you have labeled it negative. Perhaps it is an overwhelming symbol. That is how your society labels it. That in general immediately gets slapped with a negative label. But remembering that it is all neutral, you can turn it around. Because it also has 100% potential for positive. It also always can have a positive interpretation as well. And your sheer willingness to even look, to even think that it is possible to look at what is positive about something that you formerly have only labeled negative will open many doors within your consciousness and begin to rejoin the many divisions and segments that you chop your consciousness up to represent. So therefore, one of the suggestions that we have made in our interaction with your society, and to put it quite colloquial, is when something is occurring to you, or shall we say within your reality, and you are labeling that it is happening to you. Why is this happening to me? This is no fair. What did I do to deserve this? That is a label. That is an attitude. That is a perspective. And when you make that assignment, that is the effect you get out. However, there is another way to approach it. And this way enables you to utilize even that creation you say you do not prefer. And the simple statement that will represent the beginnings of allowing yourself to see this is, rather than why me, why poor little old me, ascribing the statement, all right, I understand the negative aspects about this, but I also understand that all symbols contain both. Therefore, how does this creation, how does this symbol serve me exactly the way it is? That simple perspective will at least allow you to begin to use even that creation. And you will find that when you nail down the positive reason for any creation, it will transform. Symbols and events and objects and situations are merely messages from yourself to yourself. When you ascribe it in a negative way, you remove it from yourself, and therefore perhaps are not getting the positive message from the symbol. So very often the result is that the symbol will seem to repeat. It will come back, perhaps in slightly different guises, slightly different form, from its perspective, to allow you the opportunity to get a particular message which will aid very greatly in your growth and expansion of consciousness. So therefore, understanding this, you can begin to be a bit more conscious about it and begin to look at how it serves you. For when you get the message that you created the symbol to represent, there no longer is the need for it to keep coming back. There is simply nothing extraneous in creation. If something exists, it exists. And then by definition, it is not extraneous. It is not that everything fits in my life except this. This is extraneous. When you assign that definition, you get the effect of something being extraneous, but that is a result of the assignment of your particular label or belief. So therefore, when asking yourself, how does this serve me? And going one step further to ask, how does it serve me exactly as it already is? If you will be honest, you will always find something. And when you nail down the overwhelming reason for the creation of that symbol, it simply transforms, changes face. So therefore, if there is something in your life that you feel is repetitive to you, that you do not prefer, first of all, we can assume you have been assigning it either the same or a similar negative label. So first of all, do not continue, if you wish, to do that. But when you are willing to act as an owner, so to speak, of your own reality, you would only assume that everything that you have created, if you truly believed you created your own reality, can be of service in a positive way. So therefore, by only being willing to look at what the positive perspective is, you allow it to transform and take a belief which was formerly unconscious, and by bringing it to the front, bringing it right in front of your face, literally, you allow it to transform. You allow it to become conscious. And because we are discussing this and the notion arises that you can continue to create your reality, at least from this moment forward, consciously.
A friend also, just a mere friend. I think most cases, friend of wealth, friend of power. You may get more suspicion from these kind of friend. Genuine human friend come only on the basis of wholeheartedness. If you treat them, if you put 100% trust on them, respect them, take care of them, then they become a genuine friend. That's a reliable friend. And day to day is so must be happy mood. Money alone cannot bring. Power, no. Again, inner value. So, vision with individually, becoming more happier person, at the family level also happier, and community level also much happier. Certain values based on faith towards something mysterious. So long it works, okay, very good, but not very sound. But the value means, humanism, basic humankind, human nature, I believe, gentleness. I think when we are very young, maybe more fresh, basic human nature. So they love play. Occasionally some quarrel, but most cases, the parent, particularly the mother, provides affection, compassion. The children themselves doesn't care about the children's social background or their family background. So the children play together, showing affection. I think that these are the real human express or very, very alive, basic human nature. Logically, we are social animals. So individuals' happy life or successful life entirely depend on the rest of the community. So the rest of the community is source of our future, source of one individual's sort of, success or happiness. So we have to take, like farmer, take sort of farmland, more maximum care. Not love the soil, but that is their future. Their income, money come from that soil. So similarly, individual happy life depend on others. So the others are basis or source of our fortune. So it's taking care of them. It's a more natural sort of way. I think artificial sort of thinking, I'm independent. I never depend on them. They exploit, cheating, lie, bully. In reality, long run, you are cutting or destroying basis of your own future. So humanism, basic human nature, is more gentleness. Gentleness not come from darkness. Gentleness come from full alert mind, sharp mind, more balanced with warm-heartedness than real human gentleness. So these not come from God or not come from sky or above, but come from within. So that's humanism. I think some sort of, because of that, some way to look, that's it. Humanism. We are social animals. It is bound to happen. Different views, different sort of interest. But still, these different people who have different sort of idea, different sort of interest, they are part of the humanity, part of the society. So there's no reason to killing each other, to bully each other. Even there is some differences, we have to talk. So that's the principle of non-violence. Non-violence does not mean bow down red. Bowing red. Non-violence, you should consider non-violence is signs of strength. Violence is a sign of desperate weakness. So there is a very rich human thinking, the concept of ahimsa, not only remain an idea, but 1,000 years into practice. So non-violence is very, very relevant to his work. And especially in ancient time, okay, people, different continent, different country, they remain more or less self-sufficient. So not much contact with outside. So according to their circumstances, the very concept of war destroy the other group which have different interests or different sort of views. Then destruction of your enemy is victory of yourself. Now today's reality is every nation, every continent very much mixed each other, heavily interdependent. Arab needs Western technology, Western country need Arab oil, like that, everything interdependent. So according to that reality, concept of war is outdated. Yet, different sort of interest, contradictory interest, always there, because of human vision, human desire. Then we must find effective, practical method to solve these things. That's dialogue with non-violent principle. So that's very much relevant to today's world.
And if she's aggressive, she obviously is a woman who has no difficulty in finding something. Therefore, there must be some undesirably thing about her. But if she, as it were, makes a voice, then, and is slightly difficult to get, people get excited. They know she's a highly prized object, and so they keep you. Same way, when you want to teach a baby to swim. The thing you can do is put the baby in the water and then move backwards in the water and create a vacuum, and this pulls the baby along. It helps the feel of the water and how to swim. So also, clever, difficult to get is one of the very best means of acquiring immense publicity. Take the case of T.E. Lawrence, who published the 7 Pillars of Wisdom, limited edition. And this became an extraordinarily celebrated book. It cost hundreds of dollars a copy to find one on the market. They waited and waited and built this up, and finally they published the 7th edition. And it was a knockout, because the first one had been sort of secret and difficult to find. If you have patience, you can always do it. So, the whole art of the ruler, the Tao Te Ching is a book written for several purposes. You may take it as a guide to mystical understanding. You may take it as a dissertation on the principles of nature, almost a naturalistic, a handbook of natural law, we would say. Or you may also take it as a political book, a book of wisdom for governance. And the principle which it advocates, basically, is the virtue of governing by not ruling. Look at it in this way. Suppose that the President of the United States were as unknown to you by name as the local sanitary inspector, man who looks after the drains and the sewage disposal and all that kind of thing. This is not a glamorous figure, but for that very reason, he probably does his job more efficiently than the President.
It turns out
Because the President wastes an enormous amount of time interviewing the various youths from the Elks and the Girl Scouts and conferring honors and all this kind of thing. The poor man's life must be an utter torment because he's so well known and therefore has absolutely no time to give to the government of the country. Think of his mail and all the people who have to be employed sifting that out and assessing it, so that if he were someone quite anonymous and that we didn't have to think about it, he would be a very, very good user. In just the same way, for example, you don't have to attend unless you're sick to the government of your own body. It happens automatically. This expression of itself, and it goes on day after day after day, and the better it is, the less you have to think about it. When you see well, you do not see your eyes. If there is something wrong with your eyes, you start seeing spots, and those spots are spots in your eyes. When you hear well, you never hear your ears. But when they start singing, you know, then you're starting to hear your ears, and your ears are getting in the way of their own hearing. So on the deepest level, a person as a whole can get in the way of his own existence by becoming too aware of himself. And then he lacks the quality. Now, the Taoists then propose that there be something to help people get back to Tao, to be able to be in a state of death.
that kind of belief system
So that they wouldn't get in their own
become a
way.
kind of substitute religion.
And this is connected with the idea of being
Take the 10 dogmas of science and turn them into
Emptiness.
questions.
being
When
somehow
that
vacant.
happens, the whole thing opens up in a new way.
The highest kind of knowledge is not know-how, but know-how. To be able to do it know-how without any method. To achieve this, something is practiced which is called fasting. The heart, in Chinese, is a word which doesn't mean heart in a physiological sense. The heart of the It's usually located about here. And it means heart mind, equivalently translated as mind. And in all the Zen texts where the word mind is used,
There are aspects
no
of
mind,
materialist
bullshit.
philosophy of
It is a
nature.
character. The psychic center. Now, the best kind of heart is absence of heart. In English, the word heartless
Possibilities become possible.
has a very bad connotation, as does the word mindless. A heartless person is an inconsiderate, unfeeling person. A mindless person is an idiot. But a person who has mushin, or no mind, or no heart in Chinese, is a very high order of person. It means that his psychic center doesn't get in its own way. It operates as if it wasn't there. Zhuangzi says that the highest form of man uses uses his shins like a mirror. It grasps something, refuses, it receives, but does not keep. The poem says when the geese fly over the water, there are reflections of water. But the geese do not intend to cast their reflections, and the water has no mind to retain their image. So, the whole thing is to operate in the world as if you were absent. Now, this is physiologically fundamentally. Let me ask you simply, what is the color of your head from the standpoint of your eyes? Your eyes don't see your head, do they? You look all around, you see everything else. But your head you don't see. Do you feel that your head is black? Hasn't any color at all. Outside you see your field of vision as an oval. Two eyes created from two centers of an ellipse. So there's this whole field of vision. Now experiment. What is beyond the field of vision? What color is it where you can't see? It's black. This is an important point.
But because the timing, the second, the readiness, the willingness, the searching from those times has found us and allowed us to interact with them in a more blatant way, though it is not quite timing to interact face-to-face. This is something that would be possible now within the next 5 to 10, perhaps 15 or 4 years, depending upon again the mass choices, the mass. It has been quote-unquote predicted in many different forms, in many different ways, over many different eras of history. In the time that was rendered, society was so structural that there was a sensing of the great change itself. But with the structures that were in place at the time of the sense could only be made of such great change by first understanding that there would be a tearing down, the complete tearing down of the old structure before the new one could move forward. So therefore, embedded into these quote-unquote predictions is very often an apocalyptic or negative outcome based on, again, the interpretation through the methodologies of the time that such a grand change could only occur by first tearing down completely the old reality. This is no longer so. This is no longer necessary. It is quite possible in that sense, though you will see much bubblings up within the next few years upon your planet of what you call violence. It is quite possible, and it is our perception that your mass consciousness has decided to not annihilate yourself by nuclear means, thus making some of the smaller bubblings up a bit more safe to get out of the system. But it is not our perception that you will experience and perceive the transformation in negative terms unless you carry around the fear that you feel. For fear is the same as saying that something that you do not prefer, the thing that you fear, is most likely. So it is why you think that you are actually practicing the very thing you say you don't prefer by stating that you actually treat emotional harm. If you use that fear, if you understand that fear as any emotion, simply is the window to a belief that emotions do not exist within a vacuum, and that all emotions are the result of a belief, and begin to ask yourself, what must I believe to be feeling such an outcome? You will begin to let yourself in, admit yourself. The belief that you may still hold is no longer, and your experience will depend upon your beliefs, for they are the foundation of your actions. So therefore, if you believe in a negative outcome, you will in general perform actions that will attract you to the highest degree of likelihood of experiencing a negative outcome. If you acknowledge that you believe this, acknowledgement is the first key to changing a truth that in fact cannot change until you first acknowledge it. So by allowing an emotion to deliver a belief, the joy of appreciation, or now that you acknowledge that perhaps very limited possibility, only then can you change it. And you change it in a way quite similar to how you, shall we say, perpetuate the old belief. You simply, after acknowledging the old belief, I believe in the negative outcome, acknowledge the new belief, I believe in a positive, and compare in your mind's eye how one who believes in a negative outcome or how you up to this point haven't believed in a negative outcome act because of that belief. You will see a pattern in your action. That action will allow you to use your actions as a window to tell you what you believe. Always act according to what you state you believe. So therefore, in stating the new preferred belief, I believe in a positive outcome, and using your imagination to furnish how a person would act who believes that, you will see a different set of actions come forth in your imagination, and they will then be available for you to choose as your action. Should you choose the action reflective of the positive belief that I expect a positive outcome, then you create the momentum of events leading to that positive outcome. And you create a vibration that attracts to you the positive outcome, even under the same exact set of circumstances. Two individuals can literally be standing next to each other, one embodying the negative expectation or expectancy, one embodying the positive, and a roof can fall on one and the other will sit there scratching their head, still being aware of the negativity, but not experiencing it to any degree. And this brings us to a final point. Understand the distinction between exploring something mentally and experiencing it. For you can literally explore any idea, though you have the saying that thoughts are things, they are not directly things. In between the thought and the manifestation are the actions. And if those actions are not performed, you will not manifest the things from that particular belief. Therefore, it is safe to look at any belief within you, even ones that are disturbing. For if you are not acting according to those beliefs, the mere thinking of them has no effect. This gives you the license to begin to freely view and review the things that you believe, understanding that they cannot destroy you. And in fact, perhaps keeping them in place through denial, rather than acknowledging and transforming them, actually gives them more power to seemingly have a negative outcome. So explore away. Feel free to explore the many ideas within you, but simply seek to act until you have made a conscious choice of what you wish to believe, and again through your imagination, extrapolated how one with the new preferred belief would act. This factors in very strongly with what we have referred to as the reflection. For in each and every given moment, if you truly express that you believe in yourself, and you believe that you deserve to create a positive life, then your excitement in each moment is the ultimate reflection, the ultimate barometer of the most positive possible outcome according to your purpose in mind. So, as this conversation did begin with excitement, I will now, as a new bookend, in that sense, close it with excitement. Again, reminding you that your reality is up to you. You do create, however, in two ways. One way is consciously, through the way that you know that you create, but the other way is unconsciously. And what this simply means is the result of the beliefs that you have either bought into, not understanding that you had any other choice, or beliefs that you bought into not altogether on the conscious way. As you begin to allow your emotions to deliver beliefs to you empty that cup, which is not bottomless, it is quite finite. As you have a negative emotion and deny it, back into the closet does that belief go? As you have a negative emotion and acknowledge it, you then give yourself the power to again assert the new belief, compare the actions of the old and new belief, and consciously perform the actions according to the new belief, thereby transforming it. Very simple. Very simple. This is already how you create your reality.
And that was a kind of astronomical egotism, which we thought we were splendid, and all the other objects in the universe somehow secondary to the Earth and its inhabitants. Well, what we have found is just the opposite. We are in a very humdrum and ordinary locale in the universe. And one way in which this was found was to consider the question of the phases of the planets. Now, you know that the moon goes through phases. We see full moon, half moon, quarter moon, crescent moon, new moon. But what about the planets? Now, in the old Earth-centered view, the planets, in this case Venus, were imagined. There's a lovely old book which has moving parts in our books today, which are accidentally moving parts. This one is moving on purpose. Venus was imagined to go around the Earth, but also to have a little internal motion of its own. And that view, with the sun out beyond Venus, made a certain prediction about the phases of Venus. You sometimes see partly illuminated Venus, sometimes full illuminated Venus, but no one had a telescope to see whether Venus went through phases, and if so, what kind. Now, here is the Earth-centered view of the universe, with the Earth here, the planets, and the sun going around the Earth. This is the supposed orbit of the sun. And in the sun-centered view of the universe, the planets, including the Earth, go around the sun. And as this old picture shows, go through phases. Well, in the sun-centered view, or hypothesis, let's try and see what the phases ought to be like. What I'm going to do is to have someone be Earth and someone be Venus, and I will try to be the sun. And just because somebody big has got the light. And let's see what the phases of Venus would be like. So could we have an Earth person? Could you please stand by, let's say, a few steps up, by that camera, and we will be eventually viewing things on the television screen from the point of view of that camera and that Earth person. And after we have a Venus person, Venus is a planet completely covered with clouds, although it's a very nasty place on the surface. And so we have this completely clean sphere representing Venus. And what I'm going to do hypothesis predicted, and not at all what the Earth-centered hypothesis predicted. That's one of the lines of evidence that the Earth is not the center. Now, if we actually look at a picture of Venus, we see that it does go through phases. This is a telescopic view of Venus. I'll just show you this so you will believe me if I say Venus goes through phases. Actually, the Earth also goes through phases. And in this picture, there's a lovely picture of the Earth as seen from the Moon. The Moon is in the foreground, and the crescent above the Moon is the Earth as seen from the Moon, and it goes through phases. I figured out for just the same reason that Venus, or the Moon does, as seen from the Earth. Now, this is the geometry of the solar system, and we haven't said anything about scale. How big is the solar system? There are lots of ways of finding out, the simplest of which is by radar. You send a radar pulse to a planet, hits the planet, comes back, you measure how long it took, you know how fast radio or light travels, the speed of light, and right, that was easy. 186,000 miles a second, 400,000 kilometers a second, and so half of the transit time gives you the distance. And in this way, we can determine, for example, that the Earth is about 150 million kilometers, 93 million miles from the Sun. I hear an echo, which is supposed to be it. And what we'd like to do is to give a sense of the scale of the solar system by having someone in the audience say something like, let's say, hello universe, seems innocuous enough for Mark, and let us see how long it takes for that remark to get to various places, starting with the Moon. Who would like to say like to say hello to the universe, so would we. That's why we set the voyage record. Would you please say hello? Now, that was a 1 1/4 second time delay, which is, by accident, just how long it takes for light, radio, to travel from the Earth to the Moon. Now, we have here a diagram has just been started out to indicate the rate of progress of a signal sent by radio from the Earth to space. So here's the orbit of the Earth. We will see how long it takes for that signal to get to the orbits of the other planets, Venus, Mercury, the two interior planets, Mars, the next planet out is the Sun, and Jupiter and Saturn here. And so in the next few minutes, we will follow the progress of a radio signal, and this is the fastest that anything can travel. So what we are going to see is the fastest travel time, that is
a middle step. You automatically then insert the very small notions that create your own reality anyway, according to preference, because they are who you are, who you desire to be. So because you already function this way, there is nothing really new to master or learn. Simply begin to allow yourself to consciously attract the knowledge, to begin to create your reality consciously according to preference. So in as much as you already create the circumstances of your life through, as I have said before, just deciding you are a particular way, trusting that you are a particular way, or having faith, or having complete conviction that you are a particular way, and then acting as though you trust you are that way. You can use your free will, you can use your preferences, you can use your desire to decide according to preference. You do not truly have a momentum of being a certain way that you need to overcome. You create yourself discreetly right now, whenever it is always right now. Right now. Even right now. Right now. Right now. Always. That right now and your ability to absolutely make the decision to do from what's available right now, the thing that is most representative of who you is your point of power itself. Is what tells you, well, if I can change right now, and I do change right now, that momentum is just an illusion. For if there were such a thing as momentum, it would go past right now. I would not be able to change right now. So either there is momentum, or you completely create in the moment. Now, more accurately, because we contain it all, both are. And rather than allow it to overwhelm and confound you, look at it as for if both are true, it is not a matter of proving one or the other. It is a matter of choosing. Do I wish there to be a momentum that I have to overcome, which creates the necessity for perpetuating a path and the effect from that path, the locomotive train of that path going right past this particular moment? Or do I choose to understand that right now is the only moment that I function from? And if I choose, by the way, to buy into the past having an effect, I am doing so right now. And it is not actually the past that has an effect, it is me saying right now that the past has an effect. Right now, I will therefore assume that the future must be a result of that past. That small notion, this small understanding, is why you create the appearance that the past has anything to do with right now, because you decide, you just decide, right now, my present is the result of my past. Therefore, my future is dictated by needing to reconcile that past. But you are doing so right now. You are just deciding, you are trusting in that decision, and then you act completely according to that past. And you perpetuate the appearance of a momentum. You perpetuate the appearance of a past having anything to do with now, and the next now, and the next now. The past does not drift from now to now. You recreate now. And that is the point of now. That very small, minute understanding. Because once you begin to understand the centralness of what I am saying, you'll understand that right now, you can do something else. All right, get off of that. Therefore, right now, you can decide who you prefer to be. Right now, you can decide who you desire to be. And right now, you can decide to be that person. I decide to be this. Now, as I have said, when you already create a reality, you make a decision, you trust in that decision, and you act according to the trust in that decision. Should you choose right now to be the person that you desire, and understand that you construct that decision, everything begins to look different from quote-unquote this point forward, or each now, excessive now, because you no longer look at it as the older version of you would look at it. If you trust that you have changed, you will look at it from the changed self. Perhaps at first you will strive to do so. You will reach to do so. You will perhaps need to perform an effort to do so. But you will always be able to do so. You will always be able to see each situation that you used to label from your older perspective, from the new perspective, if you simply trust that you are the changed self. Now, as I have said, it is always the action that creates the reality. So once you trust that you have changed, you will act according to that trust. And those actions will be far different than the older decision, the older trust, and the older action. So you cannot help but get a different result using the exact same mechanism you have always used. Decision, trust, action. This leads me to the so-called and getting off that mechanism. We never insist that you grow more than you wish, that you expand more than you wish, that you have too much fun, that you are too happy. Never do we insist. We're not being so productive. It is up to you. But it is an option. When you decide I have changed, when you trust, or say you trust that I have changed, but you act the same old way, you are not acting as though you trust you have changed, and you are perpetuating the older version of yourself. And then generally think, well, I'm doing that because of the so-called past, but the older you, or the older version of you is the only one who even think about a past having anything to do with the present. And basically using, by the way, the past as an excuse. Thinking that you are using it to accelerate, but actually using it as an excuse to perpetuate the thing you do not perceive. Because you have this complete free will in the moment, you always have the choice not to act, not to move, until you align yourself to your new decision and to your new trust. But ultimately, nothing will change until you move. Therefore, you can theorize, you can summarize, you can capitalize who you prefer to be. And while you are doing so, colloquially speaking, you are sitting on the fence. Not until you act on the decision through the trust that you have changed can you actually get the desired result. Can you actually get the evidence, the reinforcement of the new decision? Exactly along the same lines that you got the reinforcement of the old decision. So getting off the fence is your willingness to act upon the trust of the new decision.
Understanding or describing reality. And that's interesting because such a language, a code-based reality, would be neither deterministic nor random. So that's what the code-theoretic axiom is. It's the third ontology. So one thing that maybe a lot of people don't understand is that there's actually no physical evidence for randomness in nature, but there is physical evidence and argument that is very rigorous that reality is not a deterministic algorithm playing itself out. There are creative theorists who are still trying to make decent arguments to bring us back to the possibility that reality is a deterministic algorithm, but it's not very popular, and the general consensus scientifically is that reality is non-deterministic. So that leaves two choices. The code-theoretic axiom is why it is non-deterministic, because language is inherently non-deterministic, or the conjecture of randomness, that there's some absolute pure randomness as the stuff of reality. There's a very popular new idea happening now in the world of academic physics, which is that reality itself may be information theoretic, in the words of John Wheeler, the man who coined the phrase black hole. And what this means is, it's a philosophical and ontological idea, which is either there's this idea that there's this absolute stuff of energy, and we know how energy behaves, and we know how it converts and how it becomes matter, and we understand a lot about energy. So one can take a philosophical position that energy is this inexplainable stuff other than how it behaves. It's not information, but but information describes it. That's one position that can be taken. The second choice is that one can say, no, it's not just that information describes energy and physics. It's that reality itself is literally made of information. That's interesting, because that is suggesting that reality is this abstract stuff. Now, the interesting thing is that those who say that energy is something other than information and merely described by information, they really have no suggestion as to what this energy is made of. They want to start there and say that that is the axiomatic ground. An axiom is something that you cannot prove. It's just your philosophical starting point in a mathematical proof or a physical theory. And others want to say, well, no, we know how to describe information. We know what it is, and we want to say that energy is information. That's simpler. That's what the mathematics tells us. That is the Occam's razor approach. It's more elegant, it's more straightforward, it's less enigmatic, it has more explanatory power. So here at Quantum Gravity Research, we take this more simple approach, this more straightforward approach that many people are taking nowadays, which is that reality is made of information. So, what is information? Well, information can be described as meaning. I'm going to have to explain what that means, but it can be described as meaning conveyed by symbolism, right? So if you have some physical system in a dimensional space, like the volume and the behavior of a hydrogen atom, a lot of that is geometric information. There's the waveform in the electromagnetic spectrum. There's the waveform of the probability plot from quantum mechanics, which is an elliptical form. And then there's the volume of it. There's everything about physics is geometric in one way or another. So then we can conjecture that the meaning of this information is the physical structure itself. In other words, what is the meaning of a square? Well, one can say, well, the meaning of a square has to do with the fact that if it's a unit length square with edges 1, that its body diagonal is the square root of 2, and it has 90-degree angles. And we can use a square itself as an abstract symbol to represent a square. And because you can use geometric symbols to begin constructing a higher dimensional reality, for example, you can use squares to construct cubes, right? And that's a higher dimensional thing than a square. So our approach is to suppose that perhaps reality itself is this dynamical mosaic-like code, this three-dimensional quasi-crystal that describes waveform and particle information and describes change and time-related ideas and spatial-related ideas. A simulation is really the idea of taking a code and using that symbolism, that informational symbolism, to model or describe something else. And if you use geometric symbols in a geometric language to simulate a geometric object, then in a sense, you have this idea where the hardware, the software, and the simulation output are all one and the same. As my friend and scientific colleague here, Ray Oshheim, says. So hopefully you have already realized that there's an interesting problem here. If meaning and language and symbolism always relates to a chooser selecting the symbols, whether that be a bird language or a computer code, then you might be wondering, well, how can reality at the smallest scale be a language? Who would recognize the meaning of the symbols? Who would choose the syntactical freedom in the language? And so that's an interesting problem. Nobel laureate Frank Wilczek said, the relevant literature, and he was talking about the meaning of quantum theory, is famously contentious and obscure. I believe it will remain so until someone constructs, within the formalism of quantum mechanics, an observer. That is, a model entity whose states correspond to a recognizable caricature of conscious awareness. And Andre Linde, co-pioneer of inflationary Big Bang theory, said, will it not turn out, with the further development of science, that the study of the universe and the study of consciousness will be inseparably linked, and that ultimate progress in the one will be impossible without progress in the other? One of the last titans of physics, John Wheeler, said, the physical world has at bottom, a very deep bottom in most instances, an immaterial source and explanation. That which we call reality arises in the last analysis from the posing of yes or no questions. All things physical are information theoretic in origin, and this is a participatory universe. So we're conjecturing here.
I lost my throne because I didn't build atomic bombs.
You and your kind think that atomic bombs can solve your problem.
Listen, you little rat.
Today, man has too much power. The Roman Empire collapsed with the assassination of Caesar. And why? Because of too much power. Feudalism blew up with the French Revolution. And why? Because of too much power. And today, the whole world will blow up. And why?
Because of too much power.
The monopoly of power is a menace to freedom. It degrades and victimizes every individual. And where is the individual?
I don't know.
Lost in terror, because he's made to hate instead of love. If civilization is to survive, we must combat power until the dignity and peace of man are restored.
What's the meaning of this?
Between. That's not rational. That's not logical. Yes, it is from a different point of view. I'm talking about not abandoning logic. I'm talking about higher logic. The logic that comes from standing on the mountaintop where you can see the entire valley, the entire network, and where it makes sense to you on the mountaintop to say, if you actually go back 3 steps and then to the left, you're actually going to get there more quickly than if you just go straight ahead. Whereas down in the valley, the logical mind self is going, but everyone knows the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If I go backwards, how can I get there sooner than if I go forwards? How? And the higher self goes, because I can see that if you go forward there, the bridge is out. If you take 3 steps back and go to the left, you go on a parallel road where the bridge is fine. But the point is that the language of the higher self cannot always communicate all those specifics to the physical mind, because the physical mind does not always have the capacity for that kind of translation. The only way that dialogue, most often than not from the higher self, translates to the physical mind is simply suddenly the urge to go back. The urge itself, the intuition itself, in the physical mind, is the condensation and capsulization of the entire explanation from the higher self, saying, if you go 3 steps back and then go to the left and go down the parallel road, then the bridge is up. But all the physical mind will get is the tug. That's how it translates in physical reality, because the physical mind is not capable of actually perceiving in the same way the higher self is, and doesn't have to know all the reasons why and how. All it needs to do is know that that's part of who you are.